Borderlands 2 is out.
Borderlands 2 is out for Vita, is it not?
Vince, you reviewed it.
I sure did.
And everyone on the internet hates you now
Hates
for it.
me now, which is fine. They all hated
Welcome
me
to the
before
club.
anyway. Yeah!
Colin and I know that feeling. You review a game, you give your opinion, everybody wants you to die. So that's cool.
It's all right.
No, you reviewed Borderlands.
I did.
On Vita. Gave it a 5.4?
Yes, that's correct.
That's what it was? All right.
That is the number.
Metacritic currently sitting at a 6.1 if you're wondering at home.
Correct.
Not many people have reviewed it, though.
That's right. It's only 4. At last I checked, it was only 4 reviews. It was us. It was Jim over at The Escapists.
Yeah.
One other site that I forgot the name of, and then PlayStation Lifestyle gave it like a 95.
Okay. So, in a nutshell, pros and cons. Let me hear.
Sure. I mean, the biggest pro is that it's Borderlands fucking 2. And
Sure.
Borderlands 2 is just a great game.
Right.
I've been like that was an Anthony Gallegos review joint back in the day, and then I was freelancing at the time, and I did all of the DLC reviews. I love Borderlands 2.
Yeah.
Really excited about the pre-sequel, even though the name is dumb. So yeah, anything that's good about Borderlands 2 Vita is because Borderlands 2 is just an incredibly fun, addictive game that's had legs for 2 years now. As far as the cons go, well, I mean, you said it's all. We were talking about frame rates before, right? Frame rates and visuals and all that stuff, and how does it matter? I just wanted the game to be fun. At the end of the day, frame rate and fun can be very directly linked.
Yes.
Yeah. So particularly when frame rates aren't consistent, when performance is getting in the way of playability, and especially this is the case with first-person shooters. I mean, it's a precision genre, so you can't really enjoy or get into the rhythm of a first-person shooter when you've got random hitches in the frame rate, when it's already low to begin with. I mean, Borderlands 3, at least to my eye, Borderlands 2, rather, Vita, to my eye, runs well south of 30, if I were to guess. I mean, I've never put it up to fraps or anything, but it looks in the low 20 range.
I played through it today. We'll get to my complaints here in a second.
Sure.
But I played through the opening of it today on the train or whatever, and definitely it was sub 30.
Yeah, it's definitely sub 30, and it can get worse, and it does get worse when things start getting busy. So it's like you marry that with the fact that there's realities of the Vita hardware. It only has so many buttons. They have to map things in crazy ways, and one of those things requires putting melee and sprinting on the rear touch screen. And this isn't just me. I handed it to other people who were excited. There were so many people in this office excited about Borderlands 2 for Vita, and they were like, "Vince, I want to try it. I want to see what it's like." I'm like, "Okay, well, just brace yourself." But I handed them the Vita, didn't tell them anything about it, and they were like, how come this doesn't work? How come half the time when I press for melee, it doesn't come out?
Yeah.
Or when I'm trying to sprint, it just doesn't come out. I mean, like, you just tap it 3-4 times in a row, and it might come out once or twice. It's very finicky where you have to hit it. I understand they didn't want to be a situation where people are accidentally activating stuff, because that's been a problem with rear touch controls in the past. But, I mean, they went too far the other way, where I feel like they made a very specific part of that rear touchpad activatable, and the result is that half the time I just can't do what I want to do. I mean, you can remap the controls, but no matter which way you slice it, 2 functions are going to be dodgy at best. Mm-hmm. And you combine that with the performance problems, and it's just, as much as I love, and I deeply love Borderlands, as much as I love it, it's almost impossible to enjoy even a great game when you can barely control it or track what's going on.
Sure.
It's just...
Let's go to a listener right now. Andrew writes in. Andrew says, Beyond.
Beyond.
I bought a Borderlands 2 Vita bundle last week. I've enjoyed it, but it's easily the worst version of Borderlands 2. There are parts of Vince's reviews that I agree with, but others I feel were a bit harsh. Mm-hmm. He's got more experience with it than I do, but a 5.4 seems a little low. It's his opinion, he can think whatever he wants, and it's nice to see people explore the scale.
Sure.
I wanted to put that out there, because I think people are with you. This is the whole thing, the problem with being a reviewer, right? Is we feel like everybody's against us. People are with you on it, you know what I mean? And it falls back to the whole thing of... for me, it's always that talking about, like, what's the reviewer's job, and how many concessions do you make here or there, right? And people were very much like, well, clearly it's not as good as the PS3 version. It's running the Vita, but that shouldn't be held against it. And it's like, well, it kind of needs to be, right? Like, that's the point that they're trying to make, that it's not the same game, and it's not doing this, it's not doing that. Here's where I got my number one complaint with this is that they didn't have the cross save up and running yet. I got a code yesterday for it. Woke up this morning, started downloading patches on both versions of the game so I could play it. Got there, and then like I turned on the Vita version. It's like, all right, cool. You download your save, and I click it, and it's like, oh, there's no save upload. And I went to the Borderlands 2 PS3, and there's nowhere to upload it. So I quit out and uploaded it to the cloud. Then I came back in, I still couldn't find it. I jumped out. I then started searching around, and there's all these threads about, that functionality is not working yet. It's getting patched in, hopefully today.
Yeah, no, it's supposed to be like a day one. That was supposed to be a day one patch deal. And I mean, and maybe this is shame on me. Like I mentioned that the feature is there.
Yeah.
I chose to not hold it against the game that the feature wasn't there when I was reviewing it.
Sure.
I understood.
Your review ahead of time.
I understood it was going to be in the day. I was told anyway that it was going to be in the day one update. So
Right.
I chose not to take anything away from it for that.
Yeah, I'm not knocking you for it.
Yeah.
My complaint is the fact that I've put 30 hours into Borderlands 2, and the reason I'm excited for Borderlands Vita is now getting to go do all the side missions I didn't do and all the DLC I didn't explore and see what it's like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And suddenly today I can't even do that.
Right.
So I have to start it as a siren, and I'm running through and I'm playing it, and my thing is, like, for the that 15 minutes I get to play on the train or whatever, maybe more like 20, I can't get to the point. Like, I want to talk to you about, so when more things are happening, it's going to run way worse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because, like, today I'm playing and I'm like, I could play this. I can play through this. This isn't, like, unplayable.
Right.
But it's going to get that way. Is that what I'm saying?
Sure. And here's the other thing, too, that's... So you talked about that. The reader that wrote in, I think that's a great... His points are very valid. And, it comes down to personal preferences. How hard do you dock things?
Yeah.
For me, and this has been a historical thing with me all throughout my time as a gamer, and certainly that's reflected in the scores that I've given to games when I review them, frame rate and performance is just a huge, massive deal to me. It is a deal breaker. Like, a game that does not have a consistent frame rate, that does not consistently stay up near or at 30 is just, I'm going to hammer it. I don't care what platform it's on. I don't care how weak you're saying the hardware supposedly is. I'm going to slam it. Like, to me, 30 is the minimum space at which the game's technical specs are not interfering with my ability to play it in a fluid fashion.
Sure.
And to me, when you look at what the Vita is capable of, so I pointed some people to this. If you look on YouTube, you look for Killzone Mercenary frame rate, and what will come up is a bunch of Digital Foundry videos where they show they have I don't know if it's actually Fraps. It's some program they've got running to show the frame rate as things are going, and that game looks 2 to 3 times as good as Borderlands 2 on Vita does, and it is at 30 at rest. It's at 30 in combat. It stays almost completely at 30. Drops at one point in one of the videos I saw. It dropped for a split second to 20. For the most part, the lowest it got was like 25. It held on to 28 or 30 almost the entire time. That is what this hardware is capable of. I understand people don't want a game to be judged against its console counterparts, but I wasn't even judging the performance problems based on console counterparts. I was judging it based on what I've seen the Vita can do.
Vita Contemporary is another first-person shooter.
Yeah, another first-person shooter with highly detailed... Look, if you would say that Borderlands 2 on Vita is console quality, I mean, then Killzone Mercenary is absolutely up to that mark, and the way it runs is night and day, hands down, more consistent and more smooth than what Borderlands 2 offers. So I think that you have to compare it to other things on the platform, and when you do, Borderlands 2's performance just doesn't add up.
I think per your complaints about the performance, they're apt in the sense that if they affect gameplay, then that is the problem. But what I'm trying to say is that people will look at something and be like, look at the resolution, look at the frame rate, like, it sucks. It's garbage. It's not running at 60. It's not all this. And my whole argument is, like, there are games that run sub 30 that are good, and like that can be played and are playable. Maybe they're puzzle games, or maybe they're shitty, like.
And if they're consistent, if they stay 25, but it's locked, sure.
Yeah, like exactly. So I'm just saying, like resolution is important to some people. That's fine. It's really not important to me. Frame rate is more important to me, but in the sense that it affects gameplay, not in a vacuum. And that's like what I'm kind of trying to say.
Not like what you're talking about with Watch Dogs. Not just a bullet point on the fact sheet.
Yeah, like if Watch Dogs is locked at 30, like, who cares if it's good? You know what I mean? Like, that's all I care about. Like, is it being at 60 going to make it much, much better? I don't know. Maybe not. Like, that's all I'm trying to say is, like, people have these, like, this resolution warfare and this frame rate warfare. without really asking ourselves the question, like, does it really super adversely affect the gameplay? And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And that's like all I'm trying to say is like, let's look at the mechanics of a game, let's look at the gameplay of a game. That's what's most important to me, as opposed to these things that might or might not affect it that are more technical than real. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where I'm coming from with that. And I frankly think a lot of people do feel that way, but they're not loud.
Well, yeah, there's the vocal minority we always talking about.
I totally respect what you're saying. I'm also going to attempt to poke two holes in that. First thing is that I can say that I certainly feel, and I think there's a large number of people who feel that, particularly for shooters and fighting games, or anything where you have to shoot, not just first person, anything where you have to shoot, you need some kind of precision. 60 frames per second offers a superior play experience, not just the way it looks, but there's a finer degree of responsiveness and control. This is why Call of Duty is one of the reasons why Call of Duty is so popular. It's because even more, I don't want to say that Call of Duty players are casual players, because they're very hardcore Call of Duty players, and it's played competitively. But this is why one of the reasons Call of Duty has such a broad appeal, and why people love the way it plays and love the way it feels. Because at 60 frames per second, shooting and anything precision based feels like a dream. And like once you've tasted that and had that, you don't want anything less than that, because you want that feeling of fluidity and precision in your play experience, not just the way it looks, in your play experience all the time. The other thing I was going to say, which is a little bit more up for debate, I think, is that I know you're saying that resolution doesn't really matter to you. At the same time, if I recall correctly, you and I have had conversations where you were saying that you wanted to see if you can buy another launch Vita because you don't want to lose that OLED screen.
Yeah, but I like the screen. I like the.
Sure.
I more like the. That's true, and that's a good point. Not necessarily.
I'm not saying you're a hypocrite. I'm not saying you're a hypocrite. Yeah, I'm not saying you're a hypocrite. What I'm saying is, I think you and other people do care about how sharp the picture is.
Well, I care about that. I like the OLED screen. I'm more concerned with the way the new Vita feels than
that too. I totally agree.
The way I feel like I can break it in half.
I was having no trouble. No, I wasn't having no trouble, but I wasn't accidentally touching the touchscreen today on my Japanese Vita, which is the slim Vita, because of those nice giant dividends in the back.
Yeah, I want to. I think I probably missed the boat on getting my OLED Vita. I think they're probably.
Yeah, Tim tried to get one. Tim couldn't get
it. Me
too.
But yeah, OLED is a consideration. Bigger consideration for me was the way that it felt. And when I first played at Tokyo, I was not impressed. I felt like I could just fucking break it.
Right.
Which I don't like the feeling of. But yeah, I'm not saying that people are wrong, or that fights about resolution are always uncalled for, or that frame rate especially can affect gameplay. That's absolutely true. All I'm saying is that we often look at the numbers on a sheet and then judge the game, and I think it has to go the other way around. You got to judge the game and then say, instead of saying it runs at this resolution and this frame rate, therefore the game is this. What I would want people to say is, the game is this. Is this the reason?
Right.
You know what I mean? And we often don't get that argument because it's nuanced and it's too big for Twitter or a comment on an IGN article.
Right.
So that's all I'm saying.
Ain't nobody got time for nuance in the 21st century.
No, definitely not. So that's all I'm saying. I hate these battles because I want people to get this passionate about mechanics and gameplay,
sure,
or
our
story,
government,
or real things that matter. but more, you know what I mean? I want people to have these passionate things about character development, these passionate conversations about why is this mechanic better than this mechanic. You don't hear that a lot. You often on the base level, you just hear people complaining about 1080 and stats, 60 frames. Who gives a shit? Let's talk about the mechanics and let's talk about the game. The game. And that's what I want more of from people, because I feel like it's lowest common denominator shit at this point. Let's move past it and see if we can start getting into the meat.
I totally agree with you. I don't think we talk about, not just us personally. I think that mechanics and what makes a mechanic rewarding and what makes a mechanic well designed to where it positively reinforces certain behaviors from the player. People don't talk about those things, and those are things that don't require technology necessarily to advance. They just require good engineering and good design, study. And you're right. I think we don't talk about those things enough. I guess the reason why so many people react so strongly to the resolution side of things and to the frame rate side of things, aside from kind of like, bipartisan console, fanboy politics, aside from that, I say this all the time to people. The term video game is 2 words. It's video and it's game. And the game has to play great. But there's this whole video element. To me, ignoring the importance and the impact of visual quality, to me, is just as out there as saying that the way a piece of art looks isn't important.
Right, but to me, it goes back to, I reviewed Titan Attacks recently, right? This is a Space Invaders clone. This is Space Invaders came out in 1978. It's really one of the classic games of all time. If you've never played it, you really need to go find an arcade machine and play it. But,
well, now you can just play Titan Attacks.
But yeah, so Titan Attacks is a very basic game. It narrows the field. It's really in 4-3, and it's just this very basic game, right? And someone in the comments was like, "This game looks like shit," and that's the kind of who cares what it looks like? Have you played it? It's fun. It's very addictive. It's all about leaderboards and high score chasing, just like Resogun was, but Resogun's actually really pretty. And that's the kind of thing I'm trying to fight against, because when people say look at Mega Man, look how bad it looks. I'm still waiting for someone to find a game that plays better than Mega Man to me, because I've never played that game, so I don't care. Mega Man 3 runs extraordinarily well, except for all the slowdown everywhere.
Right.
But you actually get used to it and actually use it to your advantage when you learn the game. But Mega Man 3 to me is the quintessential gameplay experience.
Besides Mega Man 2.
And Mega Man, well, they play the same. So Mega Man 3 is a better game. But that's an 8-bit NES game. That could not stack up to anything technically that's being made today. But I like to focus on the mechanics, and man, Mega Man is just that pure fucking shit right there. You know what I mean? It does. I don't care how pretty. I like Call of Duty. I play the campaign every year, right? And those games are fun, and I enjoy the campaign. I don't play online. I just play the campaign. I really like it, and they're fun, and they really do have shooting down. But man, I still go back to some of those old NES games, and I'm like, these are the games that really play well, or the old arcade games like Space Invaders or Arkanoid or Miss Pac-Man. These old ideas that are better than the new ideas, and
Punch-Out is my big example from that era. I Punch-Out, to me, consistently, I go back, why did no one else mind these ideas, except for Infinity Blade and Shadow of the Colossus are the only 2 modern games I can think of that mine those ideas.
Yeah, and that's a great example. So some of these old ideas, I just don't want people I feel like a new generation of people are coming up that are fixated on the technical and not fixated on the gameplay. And I just want to try to nip that in the bud whenever I can, because if you focus on only these games and you look at an NES game and you're like, this is ugly and terrible looking, it's well, you lose, because there's just Kid Icarus or Zelda or Faxanadu or all Dragon Quest and all these amazing games, you would never play them because they're fucking terrible looking, and that's the only thing that I'm saying, I
mean, this argument isn't anything new, though, right? It's always that thing jumping from NES to Super NES, right? Or Super NES to N64. Oh, my God, the graphics. And it's because it's the easiest thing to wrap your head around when you're looking at a page.
Sure.
When you're not playing a game, all you can do is judge it off of that, which
That's
gets
true.
to be a complicated issue.
Now, I will see the point to Vince in a couple of ways. One is that when I came out here, I never had an HDTV, nor did I know anyone that had an HDTV in college, because we were all poor.
Yeah,
right.
So when I came here, I started using my HDTV at my desk or whatever, and I'm like, wow. This is really,
yeah.
It's not all squished anymore, and it's there's resolution and you can beautiful colors and vibrancy. And then when I went home and finally got my own HDTV and I started watching football and hockey on it, I'm like, holy shit. Yeah. And then it would really pop when I'd go to other people's houses at that time, because HDTV still didn't proliferate really in 2007, 2008, and they would still have it in their box TVs and stuff like that. I'm like, oh my.
You don't know you're missing.
What the fuck? You know what I mean? So I totally understand that argument, because that popped in me, because I was I didn't know what I was missing. So that's one point. The second point is that resolution does matter to me in the sense that when I play my 3DS, I'm like, my God. There's some great games on there that I play. Fire Emblem I spend some time with, and Mario Golf we're playing right now. When I play the Mario games that come out or whatever. When I played Zelda over Christmas break, I was like, these are fun games, but holy shit. I'm like, wow. I
for me, it's the other thing where the game.
Look at
that's where I fall into your
noticeable.
gamply side. Well, yeah, it's noticeable. I'm like, oh, this doesn't look amazing, but I get so lost in the gameplay, I don't care. With my 80 hours of Mario Golf or my 20 with Zelda, you know what I mean? Once you're through that initial thing of like, okay, whatever. Like, oh, this would have looked better on Vita or on the Wii U or anything. You know what I mean? Then you're like, oh, whatever.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I played Zelda, I enjoyed it. It didn't stop me from playing all Fire Emblem or all these things. But when you look at it, you're like, so I agree with you. Like, these things do matter in a current contemporary sense. In that, I played 3DS after playing a bunch of Vita, and I'm like, okay, like here we are. But what what that tells me, because the 3DS is outselling Vita like 10-1. Is that
doesn't matter?
Maybe it doesn't matter to a lot of people, and maybe we just have to keep that in context.
Yeah.
So
sure.
So that's it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, and the through line that I try to draw through all of this is that what it really comes down to, it's not that 3D graphics are better than 2D graphics. It's not that a 30 frames per second game can't be as good as a 60 frames per second game, or that a game running in 1080p is always going to be better than a game running at 720p, right? The real thing is when technical limitations are interfering with and marring not just the player's experience gameplay-wise, but I would say that beyond that, when the technical aspects of a platform are getting in the way of the creator's vision, I don't like. For instance, the way that, like you said, with these 3DS games, I don't think the artists envisioned their games looking blurry like that. Like, that's not how they envisioned them. They envisioned them looking sharp and crisp and beautiful, but they're working with what they have. And that's why I like the Wii U in terms of the way it looks, because trying to play a game on the Wii, like you said, because it was all standard definition stuff on the Wii, I was like, I'm not looking at what the creator intended. I'm looking at what they wanted to make filtered through these other limitations of technology. And then when I look at, say, Mario Kart 8 running, I'm just like, because now I'm seeing all that wide-eyed imagination that Nintendo can bring, but it's like putting on a new pair of glasses and actually seeing it the way it's meant to be seen. And I feel like when technical issues get in the way of communicating what the creators want to communicate, that's frustrating for me. And maybe for some people it's not as frustrating, and I'll admit that. But for me, it makes me want to like throw something.
One other point I want to bring up, if I may, about Borderlands, which I think is interesting, is that they showed me the game, as you guys know, and I think they showed me very selective parts of the games that didn't have really a lot of enemies and all these kinds of things. The game ran, like we always say, I don't have one of those savant 29.5 frames.
You said it before, you can't see it.
Yeah, like Carmack or something, where he's like, oh, I can't ship this because it's running at 59.8 frames a second. It's like, well, okay. But I can tell, bad frame rate, really bad frame rate, okay frame rate, good frame rate, great frame rate. And like I think most people can. I'm not one of those guys like, this is 28 frames a second. I need one of those, like you said, one of those indicators.
The old Craig Harris eye.
Right, or Craig Harris, yeah. Craig Harris's eye would be very good. And the game was running, they claim, between 28 and 32 frames a second. And that seemed to pass the test for me, except for some dips I saw with lots of enemies on the screen, like you said. But I also wonder if Borderlands isn't running well, because we talk about Killzone, or we talk even about Uncharted, and I still say Uncharted's the prettiest and best running game, console quality game on the system, which is a launch game. We'll probably never get anything better than that in that regard. Borderlands is open world, and I wonder if that is part of the limitation too. Killzone, you're on a map, you're on a part of a map.
Right.
And so this gives you, they close everything around it, and then they turn on the AI and the Hellgas come out. With Uncharted, it's even more linear and more corridor driven.
Sure.
I wonder if there was just some hitch with Borderlands 2 where it's like they turn shit off in the background. They got, when there would be 12 enemies on PS3, there are 9 enemies on Vita. They got rid of the ragdolling. They did all of this shit to make the game run better. And I wonder if, knowing some of the guys, we know some of the guys that worked on it that are really smart dudes at Sony.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it's just the open world nature of the game, which is like Vita just can't do it, there's just too much shit, because Vita doesn't know if you're on a map, and you're fighting some dudes, you're not just going to fucking run away and go into some crazy direction
right.
to the other side of the map, and it has to have it loaded, or at least it has to have the algorithm to know that if you turn around and start running, then it better load it quick, and so I wonder if that is part of the technical issue why the game just
so much
wasn't
going
running well.
It certainly is, and I'm not trying to derail us completely here, but that brings
we're a conversational podcast.
That brings me to a bigger question, which is, should developers make decisions about whether or not they should port something to a platform? Like, at what point does a developer or a publisher go, look, this would require too many compromises, and maybe this is just not the best thing to do? And I mean, I guess the answer is in the numbers, right? I guess there's tons of people out there right now who are skewering me and saying they're having a great time with Borderlands 2 Vita, which is great. I'm happy people are enjoying what they paid for. That's all I want to see is people having a good time. But maybe they said to themselves, look, some people will call it out and other people won't. And enough people won't that we'll make back our money. I mean, at what point do you, but beyond just economics, at what point do you say maybe this is something that's not really suited for this platform?
Yeah, I think that my take on it is that they realized that it wasn't going to work too late, like in the way that they wanted it to. Like they very unwisely announced that bundle, which gave Iron Galaxy a hard end date. Maybe they could have massaged it for 6 more months. Maybe that would have been the wiser decision to do that. Release it around when Borderlands pre-sequel comes out. That Borderlands 2 is also on Vita if you want to play, and maybe it runs a little bit better, maybe the frame rate's a little bit better, all these kinds of things. And I think it was a victim of bad timing. I think it was a victim of listening to your fans and listening to what people want, but not gauging that against the realism. Like, I want Fallout 3 on Vita. Fallout 3 would never run on Vita, never. Yeah. If Borderlands 2 couldn't run on Vita, there's no way, because that is an open world.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And you can run from one end of that map to the other with no loading, and that's a huge map. So it's not like Borderlands with territories and things like that.
Sure.
So I just wonder, I think it was educational. I think Borderlands 2 is educational in the sense that it's just going to show companies that some of these games just aren't going to work, and that sucks because, man, wouldn't it be awesome to have New Vegas,
Funny you say that.